Thank you for being here today, Ken. So, could you introduce yourself to the viewers and tell us about your career?
Hi, I'm Ken Konkin. Thanks, Jasper, for having me again. I'm the president CEO of Tudor Gold Corp in the heart of the Golden Triangle of British Columbia. It's one of the most spectacular new discoveries in 30 years. It could be one of the largest, if not the largest gold discovery if we get it up to 27 million ounces gold only. My career spanned a long history in this sector from the early 80s right through till currently still going at it. This was an old project of mine back in the late 80s that I've come back home to after spending 20 years with Bob Quartermain, Joe Osnick, Ken McNaughton with Silver Standard, and then later transitioning over to Assay Resources, where we had the very good fortune of discovering the Brucejack Lake deposit just south of us, which is an adjoining property. So I know the geological terrain very well. It's basically my backyard. Something that I'm really proud of, putting together a team of great geoscientists to flesh out one of the biggest, most exciting gold, copper, silver deposits that I've ever had a pleasure working with.
Could you add some more color on your role in discovery and also the advancements of the Brucejack project?
Yeah, I was initially working with Silver Standard in Peru at the time, being a kind of a South American manager. And then finally, we picked up a project at Brucejack Lake through a deal with Blackhawk at the time in 2000 when money was impossible to get. And what had happened is Bob Quartermain had done a deal because Blackhawk had about $2 million in cash and had very difficult getting liquidity. So they were easy paper equity deal that we obtained basically the entire sulfurettes sheet, including Snowfields and Brucejack. And we kind of inventoried the project until 2006, until we actually made the decision to go forward and move the project forward. So I was elected to go up and start the first drill program in 2006 at Snowfields, where we were able to basically identify a monster deposit. The upper portion is gold only. The gold copper portion comes at depth, which is a common theme with most of these KSM deposits at the Sulfurettes camp. But after year 2006, 2007, 2008, in 2009, we decided to move drills to the south to the Brucejack Lake area to pick up where basically Don McLeod had left off in his quest to find as much ore as he could. And we started drilling off silver anomalies in 2009, where we serendipitously ran into basically a very extremely high-grade gold hit. It was legendary. It was 16,995 grams per ton over gold, over 1.6 meters, with another about, 8 kilos, 8,000 grams silver. And we didn't react on it right away. We just thought it was a red herring because we were hunting for essentially a low grade or a bulk tonnage pitable deposit like Snowfields, but higher grades. And it was clear that by the time 2010 rolled around, we were hitting multiple hits of numerous kilogram per ton. And we knew we had a beast of a high grade system in front of us. That history is similar, and it's repeating the exact same script for us at Treaty Creek today. So that was the play. So I was appointed as the Silver Standard had felt it didn't have faith in the project. It divested from the project. So Bob, Ken, and Joe had spun out a brand new company called Assay Resources, and I was appointed the exploration manager of that. For 7 years, I was at Brucejack running that program. And finally, one of the funnier stories was that I get tired of writing the gully we're drilling with these great gold results between Galena Hill and Electrum Ridge, and sitting there looking at a bottle of white wine that had Vineyards Quality Insurance, like VQA. So I was really hunting for a great acronym, and I thought these intercepts were absolutely out of this world. Multiple kilo per ton over a meter. I needed some very regal name. It couldn't be a name that would just be, something that would show off a great deposits. So for some reason, VOK came to my mind for Valley of the Kings. So I gave it the name Valley of the Kings. And that happened in not 2009, but midway through 2010, when we then turned our attention to what was clearly a high-grade system. Similarly, I'm going to foreshadow this presentation to, we have done the same thing at Treaty Creek. We have gone through, we have found a large, very beautiful copper, gold, silver system, but now a gold dominant, late staged, overprinted high-grade system over top of this. So that's the significance of that, relevance of that discovery that we had the fortune of finding back in 2009-10. And we're given an award subsequently for having one of the best discoveries. And a lot of people didn't understand it because it was basically not a conventional deposit. When you don't have a typical hanging wall, footwall structure, basically a structural corridor, if you will, in a breccia zone without confining limits, people just don't tend to visualize that as a well-constrained deposit. So it wasn't well understood. Neither was the idea, the colloidal aspect. The only difference I can say that clearly is between Brucejack and at Treaty Creek is that we don't, Treaty Creek is pure native gold. It doesn't have that component of silver, strong silver elemental portion of the 2-to-1 ratio. So whenever you had, for example, a 5,000 gram gold hit, you'd automatically get a 2,500 gram silver hit with it. And there's numerous of these within the Golden Triangle that I know of. The biggest one, of course, is Valley of the Kings, discovered to date. So this is what we're working on. This is what we're setting up the framework, the foreshadowing to where we're going with Treaty Creek story.
Could you just remind us, in what year did you join Tudor, and did you start out as CEO?
No, it was, I was thinking about retiring, and it was one of those things where I came up in 2018, and Dino Cremonese, the president of Teuton, had wanted to introduce me to the president at the time of Tudor, which was Walter Storm. And in 2018, we talked about my participation, but the company really wasn't ready at the time because they had already signed contracts, they were undergoing. So it would be kind of me stepping into an active show. And I thought, well, I'll just stand back and just see how it goes. But for Dino, who's a good friend of mine, and he's also a 20% owner of the Treaty Creek project. Tudor is a 60% owner, with American Creek being the other 20. The idea was that I would just go have a look and see during the summer, perhaps. But Dino had asked me if I would go and look at some of his other projects and work for him that summer. I said, yeah, absolutely. Why not? Just for old time's sake. And when I went to look at what they had late in 2018, I'd realized that they had hit something that I'd seen in my days with Silver Standard at Snowfields. It was basically a lithologically hosted volcanic breccia with very fine-grained pyrite that I knew was going to run gold. And sure enough, it was that hole, a very important hole that ran that 600 some odd meters of near a gram. And that was called Copper Bell at the time, and I knew that the branding was incorrect. So I came on in 2019 at the time, because the results came out late in 2018. So in 2019, I joined the team, is when I eventually joined as basically just the consultant. And then finally project manager, then finally the VP of project development, then finally VP project development and exploration. Then when Walter was getting ill, it was apparent that he wasn't able to carry on duties. Then I was appointed as the president, and I was just looking for basically anybody who I thought would be a better fit for the company to come in and run it. But they were busy. Bob Quartermain was busy with North Dakota, and Ross Beatty, well, of course, with his great discovery, Greenstone. Equinox. I think I talked to everybody I knew that would be a good fit for this, I thought, but they were all busy with their own projects. So I thought I'd grab the bull by the horns and do my best. So this is what I'm used to, not being in front of a camera or a presentation, but definitely I'm field orientated, hands-on for all aspects of the exploration, all discovery. You've got to put in your hours, and I know there's an expression, the difference between pros and Joes is 10,000 hours. So if you put in 10,000 hours in any discipline, you will be a professional. So I think I'm a 5 times professional because I think it's something like 50,000 hours in the field, some crazy number like that. But I love it. It's what I do. I'm defined by it. So it's a passion that it's basically an affliction with me. It's beyond obsession. So I love exploration. It's what drives me to just keep on going forward, putting numbers on the board.
Could you summarize 2024 so far for Tudor Gold?
Sure. We came out with, in 2024, it began with the completion of 2023's drilling. That was basically a springboard from a very important discovery we had in our domains. One of it was the copper aspect of the project, how rich the copper was. It was something that we knew we had to attack because of we think it's the metallurgical simplicity of the project that we're after now. So what we did is we put all the drills on to bear on basically the CS600, which are copper stream 600 domain. I can get into the anatomy of the deposit later in this presentation, but the importance was that during our data search, we discovered that we had also crazy high-grade gold emanating within the deposit to exterior of the deposit. So from the deposit was coming high-grade, isolated, late-stage overprinting to two of the domains, the 300 horizon, the uppermost domain, and the CS600. And with the search of the winter of 2023 and the spring of 2024, we had discovered something that we had tagged as a supercell. So think of it as a large nebula or storm system. If that's what Goldstorm is, think of it as lightning strikes that shoot through it. And that's the best way you can visualize these. These are basically a structural corridor of a microbreccia with fine native gold. And with that was on the beginning of the search for what would be high grade. But what we came out with in the beginning of the year was a new resource. And the resource updates were really important to us because each and every time we've gone out with the drill campaign, we've done two things. One, we've increased the cutoffs extremely radically. I'll give you an example. The first resource came out at 20. Well, let's just cut this. Hang on. We'll go back. Let's do the mineral resource and another mineral resource sector. In 2024, the goal was to hunt high grade because we had the rollout of a brand new resource. The brand new resource came out as 1.19 gold equivalent of 27.9 million ounces of gold equivalent. So that was a big number, but the outer laying 6.03 million ounces of inferred was a higher grade yet, which told me we hadn't flushed out the highest grades. We still had a center mass to go through. So we cleverly implemented a drill program for 2024 to do three things. One, to pierce these areas of higher grades of inferred to see if we can expand the current known CS600 and DS5 domains, because basically 300 horizons drilled off. The aspect of the higher grades was important because every point counts in internal rate of returns when you go to a pre-feasibility or a PEA. All of those economic numbers come to bear. But more importantly, the catalyst may be the starter of a high grade. If you can find enough high grade in the system to begin with extraction of a high grade gold system or mine, a mine within a mine, think of it that way, that would be a huge capex killer. So coming into a small high grade starter of 1,000 ton a day, just throwing a number out there, 1,000 tons a day, 350 days, that's 350,000 tons a year of 10 grams. You're going to get 2 to 3 million ounces of production for 10 years if these structures hold up. And that was the goal now, was to find something around that 2 to 3 million ounce gold potential. And so while we were actually hunting not only the extension of the higher grade lobes of the CS600 and the DS5, the deepest gold dominant system, we are also piercing through areas that we were anticipating hitting what we believe to be enriched areas of the CS600. We were pleasantly surprised when we discovered that on the way down, out of the blue, we hit high grade, unexpected. And this was where we got the idea that these structures were emanating from the deposit out beyond the limits of our known bulk tonnage target. So that was really refreshing to see, because what we did then is we targeted areas of step out as predictability. Will we hit it or not hit it? And that's where we found that we had basically three subsets of supercells: Supercell 1A, Supercell 1B, and Supercell 1C in the recent press release, the one we just put out, of all high grade. And those grades, all but one of the intercepts was higher than the average grade of the Brucejack Lake deposit. So we're very happy to see that going forward, that widths between 5 to 25 meters are sustainable to get grades of anywhere between, say, 8 grams to 20 grams of gold equivalent over widths of as high as 4.5 meters. So a very important discovery for this year of 2024. Now, what we're doing is we're doing large step outs from that. We're not just coming in, just doing a 25 meter offset. We're not doing that. We're wanting to see if we can basically, sketch out the framework of how large the system is. Because if anything, history tells me that Brucejack Lake, I could have drilled that thing off in 50 meter centers and been right. In the end, we wound up drilling that thing in 7 meter centers from underground, which was just hunting the high grade. But in the end, if you just looked at it from a macroscopic point of view, with this homogeneity within the dusting of fine grained gold, it makes a big difference. It makes a huge difference that we've got this very nice homogeneous level of distribution of gold within these basically fine micro breccias, or these structural corridors.
So Ken, you published in February this year, published a new mineral resource estimate. What has changed with this mineral resource estimate compared to last year's?
Well, the biggest thing that changed was the great, from 2023. There's a comparison that we've done in our on our on-site presentation, but from the 2023 resource estimate, everything was concentrated on drilling mostly the highest grades that we saw going forward to the northern component. So we went essentially from to a new resource that was 1.19 gram per ton gold equivalent, of now 27.9 million ounces of gold equivalent. But the big takeaway was, during that time of that drilling and finishing off that resource, the parameter changed a lot, because the 2023 resource, what you have to understand, was essentially it was a large pit. 90% of the resource was in a pit. It was a monster pit. And so the strip ratio would have been high, would have been closing cost and perpetuity would have been high for CapEx. A lot of things had difficulties associated to it. So we had two very good companies that came and talked to us and said, listen, you've got really good grades at the bottom of this thing. It looks like a perfect, nice inclined block cave situation. Go to underground, see what you can do with that versus open pit. So we did. So now, instead of going 90% pit, we went 90% underground. Only 10% of the resource is actually in a pit now. And that's the starter pit of, say, the 300 horizon only. So not only that, we changed the parameter of the cutoffs. We went from a 0.5 from the 2023 resource cutoff, from a 0.5 gold equivalent cutoff, to a 0.7 on the pit. And then we went from a 0.7 from an underground cutoff to a 0.75. Keep in mind, our very first resource in 2021 was the average grade of that thing was something of the range of 0.74 gram gold. So that whole thing would have been basically under our 0.75 cutoff now. So what a big turnaround by hitting lots of 2s and 3s, higher grades. We moved that deposit from a kind of a marginal under 1 gram grade to well over a gram. And the sensitivity, I think we've taken the sensitivities out, but you could keep raising the cutoffs if you wanted to and go beyond. But it was in our older resource, but we don't put it out there because that's for coming later on the PEA. So you can play with cutoffs and keep raising them. And people were critical of us because they thought we would have found 35 million ounces of gold versus just the 27.9 we put out there. And I mentioned to them, so we'll use the old cutoffs we had. You have that. It's 34. It is. And they didn't realize that we had increased the inclination of the treadmill, if you will, made the exercise much more difficult for us, and still grew the resource. So the next slide shows that. So this slide does show that increase, that treadmill of the increased ounces growing, but in the bottom shaded areas, you'll see those cutoffs. It starts at a 0.3 in 2021, goes to a 0.5 in a pit in 2023, and finally in 2024, early this year, we came with a 0.7 in the pit. So we increased that by 133%. We also increased the underground from a 0.43 underground cutoff in 2021 MRE. 2 years later, we came out with a 0.7, which is a big jump. We still had a good 1.13 gold equivalent, right? But when we went to the 2024, we increased that even more so to a 0.75 with a 74% increase in our cutoff. So what we did is we trimmed up tightly the geological model. So this is an extremely well constrained portion at this point, open in the northeast for the most part and at depth. So you have to imagine that all the grades kept increasing across the board of both the indicated and the inferred categories, with another further out there is that 6.02 million ounces of 1.25. So even a higher grade is still out there. But if you drop down to the next slide, you'll see how it impacted the metals. And what we did is we actually concentrated on the critical metal aspect of the increases, which are showing up as being, starting out with 2021, we came out with something that was 1.1 billion pounds of copper. We would double that in 2023 because we concentrated solely on CS600 to almost 2 billion pounds. Then finally, 2.9 billion pounds of basically indicated resources. That increased that by a whopping 163% increase on that. So when you look at the overall grade of this thing, people look at that as being a 0.15. It's not, because that's diluted over the all the domains. It's only one domain that has the copper. We concentrate on that. So it essentially went from a very poor 0.06 to a 1.15 to now a 0.18. So we gradually increased it, but just because of one domain that holds well over half the resource. That's the CS600. So a very important aspect, a pivotal point, if you will, when we actually attack the copper. And that
what's the average grade on the CS600, average copper grade?
0.31. You'll see that on the next few pages coming down. On the next page, you'll see it. On the CS600, you see the 0.31 of the indicated, and the inferred is close, 0.29. So that's all the copper. There's virtually no other copper in the project. So this is the centerpiece of our anatomy. And I'll bring in my new best friend here just to show that off for you in the screen. And here it is, our new three-dimensional rotational domain of our deposit. The big copper thing in the center is what we're hunting. Very important that we're absolutely going after something that has basically all of the easy, great metallurgy of a gravity, flotation, and a system that can be extracted at the cheapest cost on an inclined sublevel block cave. So this is what the model should look like in the picture that you've got on our website too. You can play with it and rotate it in 3D. The uppermost portion is the blue. This is copper bell. The red here is the superficial expression. This is the surface. That is the 300 horizon. That's gold dominant. There are apophyses to this. This is 300 north. This behaves differently. We believe this is a supercell, this tab. This copper rich unit in copper is CS600. And you'll see how thick it is. In places, it's over 400 meters thick and vertical. Just for a sense of scale, here's your scale. You can barely see it. There's the CN Tower. So when you put the CN Tower down here, it pales in comparison compared to, and that's 553 meters. If you take your world's biggest tower, the Burj Khalifa
Burj
Tower,
Khalifa,
Burj Khalifa, the Burj Khalifa,
838 meters.
100, that's correct. It is 30 meters. That is another half distance above this. So the best I can do for scale for that on short notice was a pencil. So comparatively, there you go. Here's your Burj Khalifa tower sitting there and paling in comparison to the size of this beast here. Very, very strong deposit, very large, over 1.5 kilometers along the base. It's over 1.5 kilometers along the vertical component. It is a very large 750 million ounce, million ton, 700, 3/4 billion ton deposit. So what we're doing now is trying to figure out how these supercells interact with the emanation from the center of the CS600, including portions of the 300 horizon, because there are a lot of high-grade gold hits that aren't attributable to, say, porphyry-style mineralization. So statistically, when we take these things apart, we actually look at all the intercepts, and we actually give it a 5-meter searched area, and we do not include anything above 8 grams. So we cut it at 8 grams. So anything over 8 grams. So for example, that in hole 134, we got 4.5 meters of 20 grams gold. That would have been given, the 4.5 meter search would have been given 8 grams only and no connection to another structure. Yet after this winter, we sat there and looked at it and we realized that yes, it does connect. There is something that would not have been given ounce credit to the deposit that we can take out. Now keep in mind, cutoffs at Brucejack are 6 grams, average grade is 8. So there's the context for this. Remember the beginning of the story where we were looking for deposits like this at Brucejack, but came into Valley of Kings. Now we have found something as a late stage high grade parallel subparallel composite lode system in a micro quartz breccia with pyrite and native gold that basically overprints this thing, that emanates from it. So it's a late stage event. This is what we're hunting now. So this is what the last press release came out to identify Supercell 1A, B, C, and D.
I mean, you discovered the Supercell. You did it through, if I understand it correctly, you discovered it by actually just looking at old drill results and seeing that you had this higher grade component.
One. Yeah, let's just back us up. Go back to, you can see that. So yeah, so when you see the 300 horizon, the CS600 horizon in its initial form, what we did is on the way down, we absolutely clipped, and we thought we were catching the enriched upper surface of this because every time we had a pierce point, we had high grade gold. But we never dreamed of coming up into a dead space away from it. But we were, when we actually were trying to get the longer extensions, we were coming through, and all of a sudden, miraculously, we hit 3 of these things. So during the winter of 2023, we discovered we had Supercell. We had a Supercell. We just named it Supercell 1. Supercell 1 is now Supercell 1C because an A and a B superseded it above it. And we never saw that coming until we were actually far enough away that we started drilling, and we clipped them on the way to a further extension of the CS600. So it was a great serendipitous chance find that we had not just 1, but 3, and there may be more. And who knows how far they come to surface? We don't know that because we've never stepped back to target those. We were always targeting the contact of the CS600, and then below it, which is the yellow in here, is DS5. We were targeting DS5 as well. So if you can imagine coming down through and hitting all of these cells on the way through that happen obliquely on a northern, kind of a northern strike. It's almost a 185 degree and dipping off to the west. Very important find for us. Very important because
so sorry for interrupting, Ken, but so based on what you know now, and there's still limited drill, there's still more drilling to go. What is the geometry and also the average grade of each of these supercells?
Well, we just got 2 or 3 points, so it's kind of irresponsible to say that, but the range is anywhere between, our lowest hit was just about 5.5 5.5 grams. I think it was in our last press release. So the lowest would be cut off Brucejack 6-gram range up to 21 gram gold at gold equivalent over 4.5 meters. So the average width is running anywhere between, say, 5 to 25 meters, call it 10 meters. So it undulates a bit. These are wide spaced holes. Some of them were 300 meters apart. And then when we fired holes in between, it hit. It was consistent to the grades we were hitting. So our average is now, we're trying to hit anywhere between 8 to 10 grams gold over 10 meters is the goal. And so we have another.
What depth? What depth does the Supercell 1A start?
Down. I mean, they're down deep because you imagine we're hunting it here, but we do have them as high as near surface on 300 horizon. There's numerous. Slide 18 shows all the numerous hits in the center of the deposit. So if you go to our slide 18 or our corporate presentation, you'll see throughout the entire deposit we have had gold hits that we could not explain. We could never explain these because they were not porphyry systems. They were late stage cross-cutting events that we just thought were serendipitous to the entire deposit. There, you have it. So those in the pink were the discovery holes for Supercell 1. We are now calling that Supercell 1C. These line up as 1C. Now, the other hits on the left side of the page are unexplained. When you look at the center of the mass of the deposit, north-south, like almost 185 degrees, a little bit off north-south, they line up with an offset. So it looks like there's an offset to a dislocation. So these we have not included at all. And these numbers on the left side of the target, like 15 meters of 7.84 grams, 10.5 meters of 9.55 grams, 1.5 meters of 60 grams, did not make the resource because we got cut at 8 grams. Remember that. And they only look at 5 meters. Could you imagine if they actually lined up beautifully and became a strong structure? And what's the significance of that? So if I take my phone and I show this to you and I insert it here, and if all of a sudden you have a high-grade structure, 3 of them, right? You've got this phone, you've got another pad here, you've got several of these ribs coming through, and they emanate from the entire system, from the center. The big takeaway from that is, well, this is a great spot to start for your sub-level block cave of drilling your stations to set your blast stations, all your infrastructure, meanwhile extracting your high grade. You take your high grade, you do your 1,000-ton-a-day pilot mill, take your gold out, do your drilling off of your pillars. You're going to have pillars. You'll never get this as one sub-level block cave, but this whole thing comes down as one big push down as the hanging wall pushes down. The draw points are underneath this in very competent rock and beautiful diorite, and it becomes a 50-year mine life. But the first part will be a 7 to 10-year starter. That's the goal.
And that high grade part that would be mined by underground methods, such as long hole stoping.
2 million ounces at 1,000 tons a day. You're looking at 7 years. It's a 7 year.
That would be mined by what kind of mining method do you think?
Probably a long hole. I would say a long hole system. You can maybe use shrinkage stoping because you've got the grades. Long holing would be a preferred method, I think, for this. We'll give this to our engineers and they'll figure that part out, how to best extract that. But whatever the method going forward is, and some of the targets that we're now hunting are these 10 gram. I don't have the press release. But let me get my last press release for you here.
Any of these supercells, are they part of CS600 or are they above it?
No, they're up. They emanate from within it and exterior outside of it. So it's well outside as well. So if you were to come in to do, for example, to do any infrastructure work anywhere from the outside, we think that they come through the underside too. We think they pierce right through. So when you talk about Supercell 1A, that was the uppermost one. We had a 2 meter hit of a 9 grammer. That was the skinniest one. But the highest grade one was Supercell 1B. And that was 11.05 grams over 3 meters, along with another 13.89 gram per ton over 6.3 meters. So 14 grams coming close over 6.3 meters gold equivalent. So, and there are some morphological changes where you see silver-rich pulses of it, but it is one and the same system, and they line up beautifully. But the big takeaway is the one we're hunting now is 1C, which was the original Supercell. So this 1C of the lighter grades of the 5.3 grams over 6 meters and the 9 meters of 5.12, they're the ones that line up with the heavier grades that we found from Discovery. We just think we're further out from it. If we come into the center or come up dip of it, we'll see. We have a press release, I think, will be coming out shortly with a big jump out on that, like 150 meter step out, something like that, that we'll see what the grades hit. And that was one that we thought had some good potential for having gold in it. So these are all important, super important structures that we're looking at that will aid in the mine plan. This will be the starter. This should be where you start your low capex of $1 billion, $1.5 billion, maybe $2 billion. Worst case scenario that you go forward to, say, taking out a 1,000, 1,200 ton a day, maybe even 1,500 ton a day mill, which is not small. Keep in mind, Brucejack began at 2,200 tons a day. They changed nothing and went to 3,900 because the mill could take it. It was just the minimum. The minimum requirement going forward for the mine plan was 2,200, but the operation was the maximum the mill could produce was about 4,000 or 3,900.
Supercell 1B does have much higher copper grades than the other one, 6% over 6 meters. Why do you think that 1B seems to be more copper rich than the other ones?
I'll tell you normally. Keep in mind there is a hole in 2000 in hole number 42, I believe it was, 42 earlier on in 2019 that we hit, had a polymetallic nature to all of it. 31 grams gold, over a kilo silver. It had 6% lead of all things, about 4% copper, and about 3% zinc. That was a polymetallic late stage afterbirth of a porphyry, just like this gold-rich pulse, but you're going to have a polymetallic component in areas of the same structural corridors. So you do have different unlocking. So we need to see where that phase occurs. Where does the gold-silver phase occur? Where does the gold-only phase occur? Where does the polymetallic, where copper comes in as well? Because that's not a sleeper number. That 6% is extremely high for that basically 6 meters. I mean, that is a unbelievable hit of a polymetallic system of that Supercell 1B. It may be that there's a pulse within it that's absolutely a base metal pulse that carries gold values, or gold's overimprinted, just like the one hole that we hit Supercell 1B is unique too, because it had basically lower gold, 4.25, but look at the silver, 224.59 silver. So that's almost 8 ounces, 7-8 ounce silver with that 6% copper. It's completely unique in a way of each of these supercells are distinct from each other, as are the domains within the actual deposit. So just like Discovery, we'll find out how far back the polymetallic portions go.
And could you explain, or summarize, what indications you have that there are more supercells and how you will go about identifying them?
Well, I think we've got to take a good look at what the significance of these things are with structured PEA on what this would require to extract and how much of this material would be required as a starter to get the most potent internal rate of return. So maybe that will be driving exploration from this point forward. That's all about high grade, and more high grade, because we've clearly got the ounces here. We don't need more of the same 1.2 grams. We've got that. We've got 50 years supply just in this one domain. Honestly, we don't need more of the same. We need more of the higher grade. That'll be the catalyst, the kicker that puts this thing over the top for not just the big producers. This is going to be something that mid-level producers can sink their teeth in. They can all come in and say, God, I can do that. I can do a 6 million ounce equivalent of a deposit, or even 3 million ounce deposit as a starter. Take that capex and use the profit to build up the basically infrastructure that's required to blow off the rest of this thing as a sub-level block cave. Because now you do it like cleverly as Artemis is doing with the Blackwater over a stage period of multiple years, over 14 years. the capex is spread because you have different phases. So think of it as mines within mines. You can start at the top with a slot cut, for example, at the possibly the Supercell here of the 300 North, or a small pit of the 300 Horizon, or even at Copper Bell. Take a slot cut on that on surface. That apexes. That's at surface. You can leave shoulder grades. You can go after your 1.5 to 2 gram material if you wanted to, and leave all your stuff behind. If you didn't really want to take the 0.6s, 0.7s at the cutoff as 0.7, you don't necessarily need to process that. You stockpile it till you get to your 2s and 3s, and there are some glorious numbers, and you flip through them in the presentation. If you look at every domain, it's going to give you some absolutely brilliant. There's one that's 350 meters of 2.12 in the middle of this of the 300 horizon, right? So there's a lot of richness within this. This is the aspect where mines are made; they're not found. My end, the heavy lifting of the discovery is pretty much done on the Goldstorm deposit. Now it's a question of what's required, and every step, every way we've gone to the engineers and asked them what would work. When we actually came up with the very first MRE, the mineral resource estimate of 19.41 million ounces of 0.74 equivalent, they said, Ken, you know what? We don't know what it'll take to get it over. So, well, what if we found double? He goes, no, more of the same won't work. You got to get over a gram. They said, get over a gram. So we did. We turned the drills on things that were going to give us way over a gram. We ignored the stuff that was peripheral, like blue sky stuff. Forget that. We wanted stuff that would make a mine. So that was a pivotal point. Then we discovered that we had copper, and being a critical metal in 2021, we turned all the attention to the copper stream. And with it, had some solid gold numbers. And along the way, we serendipitously tripped into the Supercell system. Now, there's other ones here that we can talk about too. On the back side, we had one really glorious one. It's taped on here. It's the little green guy coming into the screen. It's the green little green man. There it is. This one was a unique one. It's almost in places almost 2 ounces, 2 grams gold, but it's right near surface. A fairly nice system that did not fit CS600. It's got no copper in it whatsoever, gold only. So we have it as R66. We didn't understand it. Now we do. These things emanate from the end of the deposit. This came through and became its own deposit within the deposit. Just think of the fracture. When you have these things contract, you'll see fractures that come up. And what if you had another compression in extension in an area, and all of a sudden through these cracks come up this orientation that's pervasive throughout the entire deposit that you saw within the heart of that plan of all those drill holes. And keep in mind, the average gold hit, intercepted visible gold, the Archean belts of Red Lake is about 5%. So one drill hole in 20 will see native gold, usually a match head size of native gold, something like that, or even more glorious, higher. In 2020, our big drill program, we had 49 drill holes. 10 drill holes had native gold. And I couldn't believe that. We're not shooting an Archean gold belt. We're in a porphyry. What the heck is native gold showing up in a porphyry? Couldn't figure it out. Didn't think about it. Said, I'm not going to get distracted. I'm going to stay on target. I'm going to go and drill off a major porphyry. Not going to get dissuaded. I'm not going to start chasing these red herrings I thought at the time. Now it's obvious that this is within the entire vascular system of the heart and soul are these veins of solid corridors that are basically a quartz, microbreccia, late stage, gold dominant native gold with a potentially earlier phase. My guess is earlier phase because typically earlier of polymetallic, because we had this one polymetallic hit that rocked our world. We could not figure it out, and we didn't chase it. We thought we'd hit it later. We never did because the holes were at 200 meters apart, or we didn't have the right orientation at the time hunting it. So If you're not hunting it, you're going parallel, you're not going to hit it. Currently, we're drilling on the sister company. We came out as the offshoot, Goldstorm Metals Corporation. We're drilling that thing, and because everybody in the planet previously went down the tectonic fabric parallel to the structures, didn't hit them. We just went opposite to it, and 9 drill holes hit gold. It was incredible. We just turned the drills, and not exactly perpendicular either. We don't do that. We go through when we hit something, we don't just go 90, we go obliquely, because sometimes there's tension features that come out at 90 degrees to that. So how do you hit that? The way you'd hit that is to drill a hole that'll orientate itself through both orientations. So that's how you'd orientate that. That's your orientation.
Right? I see.
Because if you don't do that, if you're in an area and you're doing this, and you've got a sheeted vein complex, and you're drilling like this, like this, like this, you get nothing, right? So you can easily, if I sat here and started drilling like this, you can easily imagine guys coming through here, drilling this thing from the northwest backwards, saying, what the heck? Or from the southeast to the northwest, drilling down the dip this thing. Can you imagine missing Goldstorm? You could do it. You could live, and we did it at Brucejack. We did it. I'm going to tell you. If you drill down an axis of thing, you either hit all structure or nothing. And we did it. We drilled one hole, and I told them not to do that because you're going to hit nothing, or the odds of hitting a gold event is so rare that when you're not picking the correct orientation of what you've understood to be that's why porphyry systems in a round global sense, if it's a round system in a round ball, pretty hard not to miss. You go through anywhere the watermelon you'll hit. This is clearly not a watermelon, right? This clearly has some controls to it structurally and some controls to it lithologically, right? So all these things have to be understood. And once you do understand that, you can then engineer your program design to optimize all of the highest probable features that would be mineralized and cut through it, not just normal to one, but across both. So you nick both trends. And this is the key, the exploration. This is what we're really good at. And this is how you fast track these things. And now, after just one short year of a tiny 10,000 meter drill program, we now have 3 structures. 3 of these things that look like just one may have given us something of magnitude of possibly 1.5 million ounces. I'm not sure what this whole thing entails with geological potential. I don't want to give you a number just to be promotional, but guaranteed there's going to be stuff in the heart of this thing that report back to Supercell 1C and possibly 1B, that polymetallic one. We have a polymetallic hit we can't explain in the middle of this thing. You just asked the question, where does that 6% copper come from? Maybe it goes to my 4% copper in hole number 42.
So with the drilling that you're doing this year and also the previous identification of the supercells, do you think that you could that you will have that 2 to 3 million ounces of higher grade gold that you're looking for?
No, you're not going to get that on this one, because the problem that you've inferred, sure, you can infer it. You can infer almost anything. But, the reality is, when you look at the data set, it's remarkably consistent with the drilling outside the domains. So they're all relatively, anywhere between 5 up to 25 meters blowouts, but generally running anywhere between 5 gram up to 20 gram gold, say, averaging, say, 10 meter, 10 gram. So 10 meter, 10 gram is the window we're hitting. So if we can make some assumptions at that point that it continues, we've made some step outs. In the presentation, again, we'll show in our corporate presentation, there's intercepts that are 300-400 meters apart that we thought were too far to infer that, but no, it was true. We put holes into it, and it came out 13 meters of 9 grams. So,
okay, fantastic.
Yeah, it hung together.
And how many meters of assay results do you have left to release, and where have they been drilled?
Half, I would say half. Yeah, the problem is, again, laboratory is just slow. I think they were changing facilities, and they had to move during the season because they thought they'd take the shot now because it's quiet.
So approximately 5,000 meters is left. And where is that located?
Just as a number, I'd say half. Yeah. That we have to go back. And the worst thing is they gave us like the first 3-4 holes, and now it's just the rest of them we have to wait for, just because they're not in order, in sequence. We would like to have given you another couple of holes, but they weren't done in sequence as we gave it to them. So they took material from, say, the last hole, and they ran it first ahead of the final hole of the earlier sequences. So we're out of sequence is the problem.
Okay, and what areas have those holes been?
Same thing. We're going through CS600, and we're expanding CS600 as far in the infer as we can. So after this program, we needed to know where infrastructure lies as well, because our entry points are from the east. So from the east coming in, you have to know exactly you're not going to put ramps in or plan for ramps to go through the middle of high grade like CS600, if you can imagine putting ramps into something like that. Now we know we need to put the ramps near and maybe through the weakest part of it to use as a draw point to get to and not sterilize the highest grade portions. So clearly someone could say, well, you're going to have to drill off these things and make it proven or measured or indicated, which is another entire sequencing of the high grade. But at this point, I'd like to see what the deposit will need in the regards of a scoping study, then a PEA, and then going forward, it'll be a pre-feas to a feas. That's the order of sequence we have to look at.
With your 10,000 meters, or which is now complete, is your plan to move straight to focus on PEA, or would you like to do more drilling in order to be able to define a 2 to 3 million ounce high grade?
Let's see what the engineers think. We're working with several engineers, and it really comes to what their confidence level is. And again, I've said this before, after the discovery, engineers drive the bus, and this is what's required, and we will abide by what they think, because so far they haven't been wrong. I think that we had to go for higher grades. We did it. Every time they threw down the gauntlet, we've met the challenge. This deposit can be whatever you want it to be. That's the one thing. If you want it to be a 15 million ounce mid-grade deposit, then you can make it that. It's got the mid-grades in it, but it becomes disconnected in places and it becomes a more difficult thing to mine, right? So if you want to optimize it, take all of CS600, for example, say take most of 300 Horizon. Who knows about DS5 if you can get at the bottom, but you're talking about 27 million ounces. What you're going to be reported on or given credit for is the first 12 years of production. If you can produce 1 million ounces a year, you're only going to give credit for 12 million ounces. That's the reality. People don't realize what majors are looking for. No bank will actually go forward and give you money for the whole or bankable feasibility for a 50 million ounce or a 50 year mine life or a 27 million ounce deposit in 50 years. That would be what, 2 million ounces a year? No. So what we're doing is concentrating on what the shiniest, prettiest, richest ounces look like, because that's the only way we're going to get paid for that, is the best looking ounces. And I think the high grade is it. Plus the rich copper, the richest copper. If you just look at the copper equivalent of CS600, copper equivalent, it's 0.82%. So it's getting over 0.75% just on copper on equivalent, right? On a gold equivalent, it's 1.22. 1.22.
When do you expect to know if you need you need one more drill season to do the PEA, or if you will do the PEA over the winter?
Why don't we just finish off this drill season, see if I'm right, and if we hit this thing where we hit it, if we have to do an interpretation, is there offsets, is it N echelon, what is it? Every time you start, you never jump to a conclusion. You think you're painting out a nice panther, and all of a sudden you've got this dragon. So yeah, you don't know until you see all the data.
As you say, I mean, your deposit has multiple characters, and you could design a mine in several ways: a bulk tonnage, a block cave, or or a smaller, more high grade mine. How will you scope this PEA with that in mind?
Good one. I mean, we're invoking the help of the best engineers here in Vancouver to give us the timeline path forward to what they think that this thing makes the most sense. In the end, you cannot optimize and take everything. You have to be brave and say you're leaving stuff behind. You're not going to take it all. You just take your best looking ounces forward for a PEA and leave it at that. And what a professional does with it, another company comes in, is they have their own criteria, their own look, their own vision. This would be a perfectly suited project for a gold company that wants copper credits. And some copper companies, copper only, want just the copper. So where does that leave us? Because you're going to get a beautiful, clean concentrate from a gravity flotation off of the CS600 with no deleterious metals. So you could take that to any foundry and they'll be fighting over it because they'll have some kind of dirtier ores that they're going to want to fire through with, say, antimony or arsenic that they can actually blend with this, and it'll come way under the EPA requirement for any kind of contamination because you have such a volume coming out of this thing. Keep in mind, this is looking at, if you're underground with this thing at 20, 40,000 tons a day, a deposit of 20,000 to 40,000 tons a day on sublevel block cave is huge. It's enormous. Just that alone, you're still looking at 20-year mine life minimum just on CS600. It's incredibly large.
Okay, I see what you mean there. So in other words, it's a bit too early to know how we will scope the PEA.
We
would like to have the drill
results
results on this season.
Let's talk again in September, October, and I'll tell you what's happening, where we're going with this thing, and what the prognosis will be of a way forward, the quickest way forward. It may be required that we tighten up on drill spacing. And the biggest question I have is, because all these were really deep-seated intercepts, what happens as this thing comes to surface? This is the thing. We've never tested that. We have to go from known to unknown. Always go from known to unknown, not to waste money. Because it'll be frivolous if we go and plan a drill hole, plan just to go through and just do an array of drilling to see where this thing's going to go, when in reality, this thing's cut off by another fault or something. You don't know. You just don't know. And so you take it one step at a time. You take it. That's why you have phase 1, phase 2, contingency to phase 1, phase 2 is phase 3. So it always is contingent to that. And keep in mind, this is 1 of 4. This is only one target of 4 on the project. You still got Perfectstorm, you still got Calm Before the Storm, and you still got Eureka.
How much cash do you have in the treasury right now?
Right now we're getting low. It's we planned for this to come down to it. So we always plan on success on drill holes and see where we go next and what it's going to cost to get there. If you look at various costs of studies like PEAs and going forward to say beyond that, because you don't just look at a PEA, you look at a pre-fees is what you do. And you don't want to unring a PEA bell after you said you're going to do it like this, like that. What you want to do is look forward to what your 80% certainty is with a pre-fees. So what you're really doing is you're doing a timeline forward, one step ahead always. You're like 2 moves ahead. So you don't want to just go into it blindly and just say, let's just try and unravel this thread and see where it leads. That's irresponsible as management. So what we're doing is going forward, trying to pick what the path of least resistance is and being the most efficient with the money given. So we will be looking at picking up some dollars in the fall, I would think.
Excellent. And is the drilling concluded for this season now?
Yes, the drilling has finished, just finished.
You're also in parallel doing metallurgical test work. How's that going, and when should we expect results?
Extremely well. We've completed most of the work on the lower CS600, which behaves beautifully. The upper sequence we want to do some more tests on. And we've been running parallel tests on the upper gold dominance, 300 horizon, and the DS5. So all those are coming along. We're just trying to figure out what would be now to reverse engineer everything again, is look at what the CapEx implication is of everything. So what would the grade requirements need to be to sustain those costs of each process? Because again, the deposit can be what you need it to be. If you need the grades to be 3 grams, we look at 3 grams only. If you need the grades to be 10 grams, we look at 10 grams only in the supercells, right? So if you need the grades to be what would be required for, say, pressure oxide sequencing, and to get a concentrate that would sustain a $400 a ton, just the process of epox, for, say, a concentrate that's running 20 grams. What would be required to create a 20-gram concentrate to allow that? Because 20-gram concentrate, now you're looking at, well, very profitable, even with POX, very profitable. And that has been proven at 99.9% of this thing. So it depends on what we do. And you have to deal out with things that there's always a negative. There's things like there's acid generation, so you have to have acid destruction. You have to include that. There are things that you'll have to deal with that would be mass pulls. So what you do is you look at higher grade components. That's why I say, when you draw this down, do you look at drawing 1 gram material, or do you look at just 2 gram material only? And then the 2 gram material concentrates 10 to 1 will get you a 20 gram concentrate, and 1.5 will get you the sweet spot. So again, the engineers will figure that out. They'll look at it, dissect it, bring it right down to the necessity required elements, and put it into a price sensitive spreadsheets. So they'll do trade-offs. They'll trade off the CapEx cost of a full-on superficial starter pit, say, scenario with a CapEx of a small pit, with a comparison of a POX system to a comparison to, say, a Albion system, right? I
Do you
think we've
think we?
ruled out we've ruled out one thing so far, and that was the
What's
study
that?
we were doing on the bioleach because the deposit's too large. Bioleach is typically for much smaller deposits, much smaller amounts of concentrate. This thing was going to produce far too much concentrate to be manageable for any kind of a system that would be a bioleach, we think. So we think
And
we'll get back.
C600, how could that be processed potentially, or what recovery method
The
could be
lower
amenable for that?
CS600, we've got positive numbers on it. We're looking at doing some augmentation with it, but I could tell you that our initial thoughts were correct, that we can have a simple, straightforward gravity to pull any gold out of the system immediately that you see within supercells that we may leave behind. You may not get them all. Maybe some small supercells that come through. So gravity gets the gold out in a pirate
Gravity
con.
plus flotation, or just gravity?
No, just straight gravity, then flotation. Flotation with a cleaner and a rougher. And then you look at the tails, what comes off the tailings off the cleaner and the rougher. Is it worth trying to scrub the gold back out of that? Because typically, those processes get about half to 60% of the gold. Now, what you do with that? Do you just leave it or do you leach it in tailings? What do you do? Right? Do you try and concentrate? So those are the other studies that are ongoing that will be required to get this to the end. Or do you just have a saleable con and just forget about it and just leave it in the tailings, let somebody else worry about it? All these questions, very important questions.
CS600, do you think that's deep enough to be mined by block caving?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've spoken with SRK, which are the global leaders in our sector for the block caving. It's called an incline block cave. There's horizontal block caves, vertical incline. Incline block cave actually can cut down on dilution. There's a way of doing it. As long as you have a minimum of 100 meters vertical, our average is 200 meters. We have our thickest point of the system is over 400 meters thick on a vertical sense. So when you look down this thing, you can see this meat right here is, let's do the CN tower. Here's your CN tower, right? So it's 400 meters right there. So you do vertical pillars in here. It's so large, you have to take it in pillars. So you just trust it as being draw points. So you do a draw point, draw point, draw point all the way along here, and you break it down, and the whole hanging wall presses down. The only question we have to answer is, what do you do with the 300 horizon and the 300 north? They have to be dealt with first. So that's the only question that's in my mind. And then the other great part is the same infrastructure used to get down here, you would also utilize that to finish off, say, the DS5, which is the deeper portion of this deposit.
You have mentioned that Perfectstorm could host a similar deposit to Valley of the Kings, a high-grade, relatively large underground gold mine, as it sits close to the Brucejack and also the Sulphurets Trust Fault. But so far we just seen lower grades, sort of bulk tonnage porphyry mineralization. Could you expand on this?
Let's go back up a bit. Let's back up and have a look at Brucejack. Brucejack right now is cutting 8-gram averages. Their cutoff is 6 grams. They do basically wide stopes, large stope, basically long holing. And if you can get something over 5, 6, 10 meters, you can actually go out, and if you have 10-gram material, that is a beautiful underground target. The big key is you need consistent grades, which is the big takeaway on this deposit. You don't have those erratic swings. Like Brucejack was nuggety to a degree when you talked about the multi-kilo, but the overall average of the deposit is blended to where when you're in the system, is something that is very constrained. So just think about it. It's a 2-gram margin between cutoff and the ore grade. But this, we think, is because it's a fine dusting. There's a nice photo of that in our presentation. You can see the little peppered native gold that once we hit 134, we looked at the gold hit, went back and saw we had 17 occurrences of native gold on the outside and the cut side. You need a hand lens, but you can see it. Beautiful peppering, more homogeneous, uniform distribution.
So you have seen lower grade bulk tonnage porphyry, and somewhere around this or in this, there should be, a Valley of the Kings analogy. How do you think you could vector into that?
The analogy I've made before is I call it, if you're alluding to the Perfectstorm system, which is the one equidistant between Goldstorm and Iron Cap, if that's the one you're alluding to, because the Brucejack Lake Fault cuts it right on the western flank, like it does to the Goldstorm, or rather the Brucejack Lake VOK Valley of the Kings. And This has an added component where you've got that thrust fault. So it's an added issue where you've got two major regional faults. One is a low angle fault that's about a 45-50, and then you've got this high angle fault. So what you've got is this great opportunity for a pathway for fluids and one of the best settings to find a VOK occurrence, in my opinion. I never saw this coming at the other end of the spectrum off to the end. But now we analyze it where the drill pads are set up, the super pads we set up to hunt. We call it Thunderdome because it's so far away from the system of Goldstorm that those faults may be analog to our Brucejack Lake faults. We think the gold grades are getting stronger to the direction of the drilling in the northeast. So when you see the new gold grades come in, they're increasing with not only the size, but also the grades. So it's very important to recognize that it is a large hydrothermal system. And when I say on par with Valley of Kings, I don't mean getting multi-kilo. I'm talking about a consistent 5 to 10 to 12 to 15 meter envelope of a microbreccia, multiple composite load systems, subparallel systems that can be mined over 800 meter lengths to 300-400 meter depths and go down and have these 4 million, 10 million ton basic deposits that'll be carrying anywhere between a quarter of an ounce to a third of an ounce. Third of an ounce being 10 grams, quarter of an ounce being 8 grams. So if you get 8 grams, you're back to the grades of Valley of the Kings. That is the average grade. Final analysis is if you have a large system, you may have up to 4, 5, 6 million ounces that we're counting exterior emanating, but who knows what's penetrating the actual nebula of the Goldstorm system, because we counted all that as mineralization attributed to a porphyry. But think about it. If you get these high-grade rogue gold hits, why are they coming in the middle of a porphyry? We think it's either emanating from the porphyry, after the porphyry, no doubt about it, superimposed late stage. What direction is coming from? It may be those high-angle faults that cut possibly the Goldstorm deposit at the end. We haven't gotten to the end of the Goldstorm deposit on the CS600, but what we're just simply doing is chasing the tentacles of this octopus, right? These are tentacles that are emanating from the monster. We need to find where these sheets come through and just chase where the frequency of the mineralization strongest. So far, our thoughts are these high angle faults are where these events are emanating from.
I mean, now the full focus is on the Goldstorm. At what point, or also maybe when your cost of capital is lower, when do you think you could potentially return to Perfectstorm?
Well, that's a really good question, because here's the thing. We've sat there and discussed this to great length of, if you're not going to get credit for 27 million ounces gold equivalent with an additional, just call it 3 million ounces gold for a lower number of high grade of 10 grams, there's something wrong with the world. Honestly, if you're not going to get credit for that, there's something grossly wrong with the economic picture of how people look at investment and leveraging. So first things first, let's get the shiniest ounces up there. If we do a PEA, I think we may concentrate just on the best ounces we've got of 15 million ounces. Say we take the half of it and we look at the highest grade ones, give it the best internal rate of return, and maybe forget about talking about these other nebulous targets, the domains that may be more difficult to get. So we're not going to try and optimize this thing and take it all.
That's a very good point.
What will make a mine over 12 to 20 years of the strongest economic return? That's the game now.
Could you give us an update on Goldstorm Metals, which you spun out and hold 18% of, and your plan for your shareholding in that company?
Sure. Before I answer that, let me just get back to Perfectstorm. The reason why we don't take the shot on Perfectstorm is because the Goldstorm deposit is on a set of 4 separate claims. It's on an different business agreement than the surrounding claims are. Those peripheral claims, if I'm telling you right now that someone's going to pay us for, say, 15 million ounces of good grade for 12 years and just ignore the other, 10 million ounces of satellite material that might be a higher, more expensive, cost-effective way of extracting it, maybe lower capex when you've got an established mill, then who's going to give you anything for blue sky? They won't. So the idea is, why should we put money into drilling off Perfectstorm right now. We won't. Let's deal with the core claims, the 4 or 5 centralized claims in the heart of the treaty project, and we'll possibly do what we just did. We separated out Goldstorm Metals Corporation, GSTM, as a separate entity as the claims to the south. That was a good idea for the fact that we would never get paid a dime for those claims. So they are on as a standstill project doing great things with grassroots exploration that are advancing it with good drill results coming up, I believe. Also, superficially, we're seeing native gold in several places within that project. So Goldstorm Metals Corp was the spin-out daughter company from the mother of all deposits. The Goldstorm deposit gave birth to this daughter company, Goldstorm Metals. So I think Goldstorm Metals Corp is a great intro level 10-cent stock right now, tiny company that can really ramp up extremely quick. The absolute curve on that thing looks like a rocket curve going straight up. I think it's going to be a potential. One hole will make that company, just one good one. So we're on to several targets that could bear some really good low-hanging fruit here.
American Creek Resources, one of your JV partners that own 20% of the 3D Creek project, they are about to be acquired for almost 200 million Canadian cash by Cunningham Mining. I can't believe I'm saying it. Could you give us an update on that?
I can't believe I'm hearing it. Never mind you're saying it. I don't know. I just look at that as being somebody's recognized the value of these things. And here's the thing about it that gets me, because it's like a middleman taking out positions on really good assets that senior mining companies should have. Can you imagine them acquiring as a Bitcoin base a lot of these projects? You know the pressure it would put on senior mining companies to get engaged to actually take up some of these wonderful assets? If Bitcoin companies do it, just think what they'll be asking for, because the idea, the concept behind this, I believe, is that they want to monetize their Bitcoin with in-ground ounces and have something backing it, as opposed to the old Bitcoin concept, which was Ether. So what's going to happen? I don't know. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I'm really old school. I don't understand the first Bitcoin. I don't, and I'm sitting there. I'm like a country bumpkin fishing with a can of worms on the Vancouver Island. I walk into a Petro-Canada fueling station. I walk in there. What do I see? An ATM Bitcoin in the middle of nowhere. It shocked me. Like, society is catching up on us. So if it goes through, great for American Creek, great for them, because it's shown value that this thing should be a $30 ounce story right now, not a $10 an ounce story. So it's a 4-time multiplier from a $10 stock to a $43 stock. And what they've done is they've anteed up. The Cunningham report came out today that they've got more interest to go after other assets. So I could just imagine what's happening with that New York group. I don't know, but let's just wait and see. I hate to speculate, but I don't know what to say about it, because I've never seen anything like it, honestly.
What should we look out for this fall from Tudor?
I think this fall it's going to be an internal reflection on going after if this emanation is coming from the supercells emanating from Perfectstorm, and we've got to track back the vascular system, how it's imprinted in the heart of the entire Goldstorm system, the CS600, how that traces back, because I'm looking at it, and you have to do this. You have to fuzz your eyes out. It's like that old collage of artwork of letters and stuff. You're looking at this thing, and all of a sudden a dinosaur pops out, or a hockey player pops out at you. Those old figures where you fuzz out your 3D imagery. That's the kind of perspective or focus we have to do on looking at things like 1 ounce per ton, 2 ounce per ton. Why are there 1 and 2 ounce per ton material in the middle of Goldstorm? It doesn't make sense. Let's take a better look at that. Let's see if they fit a plane. Let's take away all the material that runs 6 grams and less and see what's hanging on there. Look at coaxial angles. Look what lines up hole to hole. See if we can't link basic structures or planes through the middle of Goldstorm to see if we can give credit to ounces that never counted, like anything that wasn't counted above 8 grams was never included. Let's see if anything is actually lining up that is going to be part of the vascular system of the supercells that may either emanate from or penetrate through. It doesn't matter. It depends on your perspective of how you look at it. Notwithstanding, it's overprinted, it's superimposed. It is a late stage event, no doubt. We've seen it. We've seen the cutting relationship, how it cuts the porphyry. It came later than the porphyry mineralization. So same thing with the polymetallic mineralization. It came later. So we now need to follow these threads back to see what clues they give us to where we would say, yes, there's definitely a center of mass moving in this direction. We're chasing it, following it. Here is the plume. Here is the high grade. Now, when I say we're loosely outlining 3-4 million ounces, look at the Windfall deposit. That's a number that comes close. That's 11, 12, 13 grams of 4 million ounces. There's a number I can go after, a Windfall, right? We can chase that. We can actually have something like it's a multiple series of events that occur with these things. They're all sub-parallel linked hydrothermal events that are all related to each other. So this is the focus we'll be taking this fall. This, with sitting down with the engineers, reverse engineering what this needs to be. What would it need to be to give us that sexy internal rate of return of the shiniest gold, copper, silver ounces we've got up front, and put those up front? Because in the end, this will be a showcase for a producer, a senior mining producer, even mid-tier. If we can come out and demonstrate that the high grade's real and people look at it and have site visits, we're planning our core shack for that. We're laying the core out because we're undoubtedly going to make contacts at the Precious Metals Summit in Beaver Creek, and we're staying in Colorado to attend the Denver Gold Show. So we want to put ourselves in front of the major mining companies to show them what is here in the backyard of one of the best geopolitical arenas you can possibly hope for, in the Golden Triangle, where the infrastructure is there. It's a plug-and-play system. They've allowed, with our good neighbors, Seabridge, they've just got their indefinite environmental impact on big pits, like 4 of them. So if British Columbia, in basically an NDP or a kind of a left-wing government, is allowing these things to be permitted, that's great news for the mining sector. It really is. So we really have to look at that as a positive thing, and just get together with everybody in the mining sector and keep pushing for bringing the world attention away from, destabilizing countries that are coming apart. I'd love to see Argentina. That's a great success story because geopolitically, it's now stable. That president's done a great job in Argentina. I'd been there for 6-7 years working there. I love the country. Great success on stories like the Frank Justra new company. All these things are going to be new assets, and that's silver. This also has a great silver component, 140 million ounces of silver. People don't realize how large this is. And we're not talking 2-gram material. This is up in the 6-gram material. So extractable, countable silver, if people really, really like to hedge their investment to a silver project. This is the third metal, but Goldstorm, you mentioned it earlier, Goldstorm Metals Corporation has a beautiful silver trend where everything is in kilos. There's 12 kilos, 13 kilos, 14 kilos, up to 20, 55 kilos. Silver was my highest sample. Mind you, it was a hand sample that had the 55, but there are significant widths with multi-kilo silver along the delta and running right from the electrum. So that is a trend, a bona fide trend that we are on. So we would like to acquire more ground with Goldstorm Metals Corporation to advance our footprint as best we can, look at our neighbors and talk to our people and see who wants to do what, and see if we can amalgamate. That's our goal. We'd like to see that happen because it's M&A for everybody before we become, basically absorbed by another company. I think we like to get strength. So for us at Tudor specifically, the goal is to showcase what we've got. We need stronger stock prices. We do not want to dilute. We've got measures in place that we can finance at very small amounts. Just take what's needed. Only take what's needed. We've got about 260 million shares out there fully diluted, something like that. It's not that far up yet, but I think the stock should be trading at 360. I think Research Capital has it correct. They cover us and they've got it right. 360 should be the price. And I don't know what's holding it back. I think interest rates are coming down. People need disposable income. They just don't have it yet. They have to worry about mortgages, cars, everything else. Once you see that, it'll be a turning point for everybody in the sector. I believe that.
Where do you envision Tudor Gold in 2 years?
Wow, 2 years. Going past the PEA, I think hopefully in alliance with the major company. There's got to be some major companies come up and stepped up and will be financing us for the rest of the exploration they want to see go forward. Because not like I said, you've also got these other outlier targets to go after. So first things first, let's see Tudor get either a straight buyout, perhaps amalgamation with Teuton would be nice if American Creek does go by way of the Bitcoin. If not, then we just roll it all up together as under one canopy. Let's put it under one roof and make it 100% under one. Everybody has shares of Tudor would be my ideal goal here.